You know what happened? I had a one-night stand with my boss, and I'd do it again. Those words hit me like a freight train as I stood in the doorway of our kitchen, still wearing my grease-stained work clothes from another brutal day fixing computers at the repair shop. Julia didn't even look up from her phone when she said it, just kept scrolling through whatever corporate nonsense occupied her attention these days, her manicured fingers dancing across the screen like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I'm Dave Patterson, 34 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew my wife. We'd been married 8 years, built what I believed was a solid life in our quiet neighborhood where Mrs. Donnelly waters her roses every morning and waves at everyone who passes by. Julia worked her way up to middle management at TechFlow Solutions downtown, while I kept the neighborhood's computers running and their network secure. Not glamorous, but honest work. The kitchen felt different now, like the air itself had turned toxic. I watched Julia take another bite of the Chinese takeout I'd brought home as a peace offering after our argument the night before. She chewed methodically, still not meeting my eyes. "That's it?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "That's all you have to say?" She finally looked up, and I saw something I'd never seen before in those green eyes that used to light up when I walked through the door. Contempt. Pure, undiluted contempt. "What do you want me to say, Dave? That I'm sorry? That it was a mistake?" She set down her chopsticks and leaned back in her chair. "I'm not sorry. Brent makes me feel alive again. When's the last time you did that?" Brent. Her boss. The same guy she'd been talking about for months, praising his leadership style and innovative thinking. The same guy who'd been texting her at all hours, messages she claimed were work-related. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, fighting the urge to flip the table and watch her precious phone shatter on the tile floor. Instead, I smiled. It felt wrong on my face, like wearing someone else's clothes. "Interesting," I said. "Tell me more." For the first time since I'd walked in, Julia looked uncertain. She'd expected shouting, maybe tears. The calm acceptance threw her off balance. "Dave, no, really. I want to understand. How long has this been going on?" She straightened her shoulders, regaining her composure. 3 months. We've been meeting at the Marriott downtown twice a week." The Marriott, where she claimed she'd been attending extended training sessions. I nodded like we were discussing the weather. "And you're planning to leave me for him?" "I don't know yet. Maybe. Brent's married too, and his situation is complicated." Of course it was. I studied my wife's face, memorizing every detail. The way her left eyebrow arched slightly higher than her right when she was being defensive. The small scar on her chin from when she fell off her bike as a kid. The lips that used to whisper, "I love you," every morning before work. "Well," I said, standing up, "I appreciate your honesty." Julia blinked. "That's it? What else is there to say? You've made your choice." I grabbed a water bottle from the refrigerator. "I'm going to take a shower." As I walked toward the stairs, I heard her chair scrape against the floor. "Dave, wait! We should talk about this, about what happens next." I paused on the bottom step. "What happens next is entirely up to you, Julia. But you might want to think carefully about your next moves." In the bathroom, I turned on the shower and sat on the edge of the tub, my mind racing. 3 months. 3 months of lies. Of her coming home and kissing me goodnight after being with him. 3 months of me working extra hours to pay for the new clothes she said she needed for work, the gym membership she claimed would help her stay healthy, the phone upgrade that made her more efficient. I wasn't angry yet. The anger would come later, I knew, but right now I felt something else. Something colder and more focused. Julia thought she held all the cards because she'd been honest about the affair. She probably expected me to beg her to stay, to promise I'd change, to fight for our marriage. She had no idea what kind of fight she'd just started. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm and lay in bed listening to Julia's breathing. She slept peacefully, one arm thrown over her face, completely unaware that I'd spent most of the night planning. Not planning violence or anything that would land me in legal trouble, but planning nonetheless. I slipped out of bed and padded downstairs to make coffee, a routine I'd maintained for years. But this morning, I made only one cup. When Julia came down 20 minutes later, already dressed in her sharp business suit, she found me reading the news on my tablet. "No coffee?" she asked, moving toward the machine. "I figured you'd want to grab some on your way to see Brent," I said without looking up. She froze. "Dave, about last night, nothing to discuss. You were clear about where things stand." Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Julia poured herself coffee with shaking hands. The uncertainty was back, stronger now. She'd spent the night expecting a confrontation that never came, and it was eating at her. "I don't want this to be ugly," she said. "Neither do I. Maybe we should see a counselor, try to work through this." Now I did look up, giving her my full attention. "You want to work through your affair with your boss? The one you plan to continue?" "I didn't say I was going to continue it. You didn't say you were going to stop it either." She opened her mouth, then closed it. We both knew the truth. "I'll be late tonight," she finally said. "Team meeting." "With Brent?" "Yes, with Brent, and the rest of the team." I nodded and returned to my tablet. "Drive safe." After she left, I sat in the quiet kitchen and allowed myself a small smile. Julia thought she was in control of this situation, but she'd made a crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Eli. "Drinks tonight? You sounded weird when you called yesterday." I typed back, "Can't tonight, working on a project, but I might need your help with something soon." "Anything, man, you know that." I did know that. Eli Martinez owned a dive bar called Murphy's on the South Side, and in his previous life, he'd been a private investigator. He understood people, their motivations and weaknesses. More importantly, he understood how information flowed through a community. My sister Leah called while I was getting ready for work. "You sound different," she said without preamble. "What's going on?" "Julia's having an affair." Silence. Then, "That witch. Dave, I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be helpful. I might need some legal advice soon." "What kind of legal advice?" "The kind that keeps me out of trouble while I handle this my way." "Dave, whatever you're thinking, I'm not thinking anything violent or illegal, but I'm also not rolling over and playing the victim." Another pause. "Call me before you do anything stupid." Define stupid. You know what I mean. After work, I drove to TechFlow's downtown office building instead of going home. I parked across the street and waited. At 6:47 p.m., Julia emerged from the lobby with a tall man in an expensive suit. Brent Morrison, according to the company directory I'd looked up online. 42 years old, married to a woman named Catherine, 2 kids in private school. They walked to his BMW like they owned the world, her hand resting on his arm, his fingers trailing across her lower back. I watched them drive away toward the Marriott and felt the first stirrings of real anger. But anger was just fuel. I needed a plan. The plan started simple and grew more complex as I learned more about my targets. Yes, targets plural, because this wasn't just about Julia anymore. I spent the next week in reconnaissance mode, a skill I'd picked up during my brief stint in the Army before I got into computer repair. I followed patterns, documented behaviors, and built profiles on everyone involved in my wife's betrayal. Brent Morrison lived in a gated community 20 minutes from downtown, in a house that probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years. His wife Catherine volunteered at their kids' school and ran a small interior design business from home. She posted frequently on social media about family activities, charity events, and her husband's professional achievements. She had no idea her husband was screwing my wife twice a week at the Marriott. Julia had become sloppy with her phone security, leaving it unlocked while she showered or charged it overnight. I didn't need to hack anything, I just needed to pay attention. The text messages between her and Brent were revealing in more ways than one. "Can't wait to feel you again," from her. "You drive me crazy in those meetings," from him. "Dave suspects something. We need to be more careful," from her. "Don't worry about Dave. What's he going to do?" from him. What indeed? But the most interesting discovery came from Julia's conversations with her best friend Anya Volkov. Anya worked in HR at a competing tech firm and had been Julia's confidant throughout the affair. Their messages revealed something that changed everything. "You sure about this plan?" Anya had texted 3 weeks earlier. "Positive. Dave's held me back long enough. Time to upgrade," Julia replied. "And you think Brent will leave Catherine for you?" "He will once I have the right leverage. Just remember our deal. When you're Mrs. Morrison, I want that recommendation letter for TechFlow." Done. Dave will never see it coming. I stared at that exchange for a long time, sitting in my truck outside the coffee shop where I'd gone to think. This wasn't a spontaneous affair born of passion or marital problems. This was a calculated plan to destroy my life so Julia could climb the social and economic ladder. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected, but it also clarified things. Julia and Anya thought they were playing chess while I played checkers. Time to show them how wrong they were. My first move was subtle. I created a fake email account and sent an anonymous message to Catherine Morrison. "You might want to check your husband's credit card statements for charges at the Marriott downtown. Tuesdays and Fridays, usually around lunchtime." I didn't sign it or provide details, just enough to plant a seed of doubt. The second move targeted Anya directly. I'd done some research and discovered she'd been inflating her qualifications on professional networking sites, claiming experience and certifications she didn't have. A few anonymous tips to her current employer's ethics hotline would keep her busy, but those were just opening gambits. The real strategy required more finesse. I called Eli on Thursday night. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to not ask questions," I said. "Shoot. If someone wanted to gather information about people in this town, where would they go?" "Depends on what kind of information. Financial stuff. You'd need a PI license or a court order. Personal stuff, though." He paused. "Mrs. Donnelly knows everyone's business. She's like a one-woman intelligence network." Mrs. Donnelly, our 73-year-old neighbor who'd lived on our street for 40 years and had opinions about everything. I'd always thought her gossipy nature was annoying, but now I saw its potential. Hypothetically, how would someone get Mrs. Donnelly interested in a particular topic? You'd give her something juicy to chew on. She can't resist a good scandal, especially if it involves people she knows. Perfect. On Friday morning, I timed my departure to coincide with Mrs. Donnelly's daily rose-watering ritual. I walked to my truck slowly, making sure she had time to notice me. "Morning, Dave," she called out. "You look tired, dear." "Haven't been sleeping well," I replied, moving closer to the fence between our yards. "Marriage troubles, you know how it is." Her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Oh no, what's wrong?" I glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers. I probably shouldn't say anything, but Julia's been working late a lot lately. Team meetings with her boss, she says. Well, that's dedication to her career. Maybe, or maybe she's just dedicated to her boss. I shrugged. I'm probably being paranoid. Mrs. Donnelly stepped closer to the fence. What makes you think that? New clothes, new perfume, always on her phone. Classic signs, right? Plus, I drove by her office last week and saw her getting into her boss's car. Probably nothing. What's her boss like? Brent Morrison. Married guy, lives over in Willowbrook Estates. Seems to have plenty of money to throw around. I could practically see the gears turning in Mrs. Donnelly's head. By the end of the day, half the neighborhood would know that Julia Patterson might be having an affair with her married boss. That afternoon, I got a text from Julia. "Having dinner with the team tonight. Don't wait up." I texted back, "Enjoy your team dinner." But instead of going home, I drove to Murphy's to meet Eli. "You look like a man with a plan," he said, sliding a beer across the bar. Getting there, "Tell me about information warfare." Eli raised an eyebrow. "That's a specific topic." "I'm a specific kind of angry." He leaned against the bar, lowering his voice. "Information warfare is about controlling the narrative. You make your enemies react to your story instead of telling their own." "Go on." "First rule, always stay ahead of the cycle. Release information in small doses, let people draw their own conclusions. Second rule, use multiple sources. People trust information more when they hear it from different places. Third rule, timing is everything. You want maximum impact with minimum blowback." I nodded, filing away every word. "Dave, whatever Julia did, don't let it turn you into someone you're not." "I'm not planning to hurt anyone, Eli, but I'm also not planning to be a victim." He studied my face for a moment, then nodded. "What do you need from me?" "Information distribution. You hear things in this bar, and you know how to share things without it looking like you're sharing them." "I can work with that." We spent the next hour planning phase 2 of my campaign. By the time I left Murphy's, I felt more focused than I had in weeks. Julia was already asleep when I got home, or pretending to be. I lay in bed next to her, thinking about how different everything would be in a few weeks. She thought she was playing a game where she held all the advantages, the affair, the planning, the element of surprise. But she'd made a critical error. She'd assumed I was the same person I'd always been, content to fix computers and live quietly in our middle-class bubble. She was about to learn that people can change very quickly when they have the right motivation. The first crack in Julia's facade appeared on Monday morning when she couldn't find her favorite coffee mug. It was a small thing, barely worth mentioning, but I watched her tear apart the kitchen looking for it. "Have you seen my TechFlow mug?" she asked, pulling dishes out of cabinets. "The blue one? I think it broke. Sorry, forgot to mention it." She stared at me. "When did it break?" "Yesterday, I think. I was washing dishes and it slipped. It hadn't broken. I'd hidden it in the garage, along with several other small items she'd miss, but couldn't quite pinpoint. Psychological pressure, Eli called it. Little disruptions that create underlying stress without obvious cause. That was my favorite mug. I'll get you a new one." But we both knew it wouldn't be the same. That mug had been a gift from Brent, though she'd claimed it came from the company store. I'd seen the receipt in her purse, along with a note, "For my favorite team member." The second crack appeared at lunchtime, when Catherine Morrison called TechFlow's main number asking to speak with her husband. The receptionist transferred the call to his office, but Brent was at the Marriott with my wife. His assistant had to make excuses, and word spread through the office that Mrs. Morrison had sounded upset. Julia came home that evening looking rattled. "Everything okay?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "Fine, just office drama." "Want to talk about it?" "No." But she did want to talk about it, I could tell. The stress was eating at her, and she had no one to confide in except Anya, who was dealing with her own problems at work, thanks to my anonymous ethics complaints. On Tuesday, I escalated. Mrs. Donnelly had done her job perfectly, spreading the story of Julia's possible affair through her network of neighborhood contacts. But gossip alone wasn't enough. I needed documentation. I'd been thinking about the credit card statements Catherine Morrison would be checking, and I realized I had access to something even better. Julia's phone records. As the account holder on our family plan, I could see every call and text, though not the content. The pattern was damning. Dozens of calls to Brent's personal number, always during work hours or late at night. text message timestamps that coincided with her team meetings and training sessions. I printed everything out and put it in a manila folder, along with screenshots of Julia's social media posts from days when she claimed to be in meetings but had actually been at the Marriott. The timestamps on her location tags told the real story. Then I did something that felt both brilliant and terrible. I mailed copies to 3 people: Catherine Morrison, Brent's wife; David Chen, TechFlow's HR director; and Patricia Williams, the gossip columnist for our local newspaper who specialized in community interest stories. I didn't include a letter or explanation, just the evidence with key dates and times highlighted in yellow. The explosion came on Thursday. I was replacing a hard drive at the community center when my phone rang. Julia's name appeared on the screen, and I could hear shouting in the background before I even answered. "Dave, I need you to come pick me up." "Where are you?" "The office. There's been a situation." "What kind of situation?" "Just come get me, please." The desperation in her voice was new. I'd never heard Julia sound genuinely scared before. I found her waiting in the TechFlow lobby, clutching her purse and a small cardboard box. Her face was pale, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. "What happened?" I asked as we walked to my truck. "Someone sent HR some information about me and Brent. They're calling it a conduct investigation." "What kind of information?" She turned to look at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. Phone records, meeting schedules, hotel receipts. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Someone's been watching us." I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. "Any idea who?" "No, but Dave, this is bad. They've suspended both of us pending the investigation, and Brent's wife knows." "How do you know his wife knows?" "Because she showed up at the office an hour ago screaming at him in the lobby. Security had to escort her out." We drove in silence for several minutes. I could feel Julia watching me, trying to read my expression. "You don't seem surprised," she said finally. "Should I be? You told me you were having an affair. I assumed other people would figure it out eventually." "This isn't just figuring it out. Someone deliberately gathered evidence and sent it to multiple people. Someone with access to personal information." I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this feels targeted, like someone wanted to destroy us." "Us?" "Me and Brent." I looked at her sitting in my truck, holding her pathetic cardboard box of desk supplies, finally understanding that her actions had consequences. The satisfaction was sweeter than I'd expected. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair." "Dave, I know you're angry, but..." "I'm not angry, Julia. I'm disappointed. There's a difference." That night, she tried to salvage things with Brent, calling him repeatedly while I pretended to watch television. I could hear his voice through the phone, sharp and panicked. "We need to stop seeing each other," he was saying. "Catherine's threatening divorce. She's already called a lawyer." "But what about our plans?" Julia asked. "What plans?" "Julia, this was never going to be permanent. I thought you understood that." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Julia's face crumble as she realized Brent had been using her, that all her careful planning had been based on a lie. "You said you loved me." "I do love you, but I love my family more, and I can't lose them." The call ended, and Julia sat staring at her phone like it might ring again. When it didn't, she looked at me. "Did you do this?" "Do what?" "Send those records to HR, to his wife." I met her gaze steadily. "Why would I do that?" "Because you're angry. Because you want revenge." "Julia, if I wanted revenge, don't you think I'd do something more dramatic than sending paperwork to your HR department?" She didn't have an answer for that, which was exactly what I'd hoped for. The best revenge was the kind that looked like natural consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. "Heard about the drama at TechFlow. You okay?" I texted back, "Better than okay." "Want to celebrate?" "Not yet. Still have work to do." Because this was just the beginning. Julia had lost her job and her lover, but she still thought this was about the affair. She had no idea how deep the betrayal went, or how much more she had to lose. I was just getting started. The next phase of my plan required patience and perfect timing. Julia spent the weekend in damage control mode, calling lawyers about wrongful termination and trying to reach Brent, who had apparently blocked her number. I played the supportive husband, bringing her coffee and asking how I could help, all while documenting every conversation she had with Anya about their backup plan. That's when I learned the truth about just how calculated this whole thing had been. "The recommendation letter won't work now," Julia was saying into her phone, pacing around our living room while I pretended to read in my chair. "Brent's not going to help anyone after this mess." "What about the other thing?" Anya asked. I could hear her voice clearly through the speaker. "What other thing?" "The business plan, the consulting firm we talked about starting." Julia glanced at me, then lowered her voice. "Not over the phone. Julia, we invested too much in this to back out now. You said Dave would never figure out what we were doing." "What business plan? What investment?" "Anya, I said not over the phone." "Fine. Meet me at the usual place tomorrow morning. We need to figure out our next move." After Julia hung up, I excused myself to take a shower, but instead I went to my computer and started digging. If Julia and Anya had been planning something that involved investments and business plans, there would be a paper trail. I found it in Julia's email, in a folder labeled Future Projects. Dozens of messages between her and Anya dating back 6 months, outlining their plan to start a consulting firm that would compete directly with TechFlow. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the client list they'd been building, using information Julia had stolen from TechFlow's database. Contact information, contract details, pricing structures, and strategic plans. They'd been preparing to poach TechFlow's biggest clients the moment Julia left the company. And they'd been funding their startup preparation with money from our joint savings account. $15,000, withdrawn in small amounts over 3 months and transferred to a business account I'd never heard of. I sat in my home office, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and realized the affair with Brent had been a sideshow. The real plan was corporate espionage and theft, with Anya as the mastermind and Julia as the inside source. They'd been planning to destroy TechFlow and get rich doing it, all while I worked overtime to pay our bills and fund their scheme without knowing it. The anger I'd been keeping under control finally broke free, but it was a cold anger, focused and calculating. Julia thought she was smart, but she'd made a crucial mistake. She'd documented everything. I spent the rest of the night copying files, printing emails, and building a case that would destroy both of them. But I wasn't going to rush. This required surgical precision. On Monday morning, Julia left for her meeting with Anya at their usual place, which turned out to be a small cafe downtown. I followed at a distance and watched them through the window, heads together over laptops and documents. While they planned their next move, I was making mine. I called my sister Leah. "I need to know about corporate espionage laws," I said without preamble. "Good morning to you too. What kind of corporate espionage?" "The kind where someone steals client information and trade secrets to start a competing business." "That's serious. We're talking federal charges if the dollar amounts are high enough. Why?" I told her everything: the affair, the business plan, the stolen client data, the money taken from our savings account. "Dave, this is way beyond marriage problems. If Julia and her friend have been stealing proprietary information, they could go to prison." "I know. What do you want to do about it?" "I want to give them enough rope to hang themselves. Then I want to make sure the right people know about it. Be very careful. If you're planning to report them, make sure your hands are clean. How did you get access to this information?" Julia left her email open on our shared computer. The bank statements are from our joint account. Everything I have, I obtained legally. "Good. But Dave, once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. Julia could face serious criminal charges." She should have thought about that before she decided to steal from her employer and lie to her husband. That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to David Chen at TechFlow's HR department. I explained that I had information relevant to their investigation of Julia Patterson and Brent Morrison, and that it involved potential corporate espionage. The second was to the FBI's white-collar crime division. I reported suspected theft of trade secrets and provided them with Julia's email address and the business account information I'd found. The third was to Patricia Williams at the local newspaper. I told her I had a follow-up story to the TechFlow affair scandal involving corporate espionage and a conspiracy to steal client data. Then I went home and waited. Julia returned from her meeting with Anya looking more confident than she had in days. "How did it go?" I asked. "Good. We're going to pivot our strategy, focus on freelance consulting instead of starting a firm. Smart move, less overhead." She looked surprised by my supportive response. "You think so?" "Absolutely. Why take on the risk and expense of a full business when you can just work with existing clients?" "Exactly. Anya has some contacts who might be interested in our services." I nodded encouragingly, all while knowing that by tomorrow, both of them would be under federal investigation. That evening, Julia was almost cheerful. She made dinner and talked about her plans for the consulting work, completely unaware that I'd spent the day systematically destroying her life. "I know this has been hard on you," she said as we cleaned up the dishes. "The affair, losing my job, all the uncertainty. We'll get through it. I want you to know that I'm committed to making our marriage work. The thing with Brent was a mistake." I looked at my wife, standing in our kitchen, lying to my face while planning to continue the scheme that had funded her affair and would ultimately destroy the company where dozens of people earned their living. "I appreciate that, Julia. Maybe we could go to counseling, start fresh. Maybe." But we both knew there would be no fresh start. In less than 24 hours, everything would change. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Agent Sarah Mitchell, FBI. We need to speak with you tomorrow morning about the information you provided. Can you come to our field office at 9 a.m.? I texted back, "I'll be there." Julia noticed me typing. "Work?" "Yeah. Client emergency." She nodded and went back to loading the dishwasher, humming softly to herself. She seemed genuinely happy for the first time in months, probably because she thought she'd gotten away with everything. Tomorrow, she'd learn how wrong she was. The FBI field office was smaller than I'd expected, located in a generic office building downtown. Agent Sarah Mitchell was a compact woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Mr. Patterson, thank you for coming in. We've reviewed the information you provided, and we'd like to ask you some questions." For the next 2 hours, I walked them through everything. Julia's affair, the business plan with Anya, the stolen client data, the money taken from our joint account. I provided copies of emails, bank statements, and phone records. "This is substantial," Agent Mitchell said, reviewing the documents. "If your wife and Ms. Volkov have been stealing proprietary information with the intent to use it for commercial advantage, we're looking at potential violations of the Economic Espionage Act." "What does that mean?" "It means they could face up to 10 years in federal prison if convicted." The weight of that statement settled over me. 10 years. I'd wanted revenge, but I hadn't fully grasped how severe the consequences might be. "Mr. Patterson, I need to ask you directly. What's your motivation for bringing this to our attention?" I met her gaze. "My wife has been lying to me for months. She's been stealing from her employer and using our money to fund it. She thinks I'm too stupid to figure out what she's been doing." "And you want her prosecuted?" "I want her held accountable for her choices." Agent Mitchell nodded. "We'll be opening a formal investigation. We may need to speak with you again, and you might be called to testify if charges are filed." "I understand. One more thing. Don't discuss this investigation with anyone, including your wife. Let her continue with whatever she's planning." The more evidence we can gather of ongoing criminal activity, the stronger our case will be. I drove home feeling a mixture of satisfaction and unease. I'd wanted Julia to face consequences for her betrayal, but federal prison seemed extreme. Then I reminded myself that she'd made these choices. I was just making sure she couldn't escape them. Julia was on the phone with Anya when I walked in, and from her excited tone, it was clear they were moving forward with their plans. He said they'd pay our consulting rate for the client analysis, she was saying. We just need to provide them with the same level of detail they were getting from TechFlow. I went to the kitchen and started making lunch, listening to my wife discuss how they'd use stolen proprietary information to undercut her former employer's business. Dave's being really supportive, she continued. I think this whole situation might actually bring us closer together. The irony was staggering. Over the next week, I watched Julia and Anya accelerate their criminal activity, apparently convinced they were untouchable. They met with potential clients, presented proposals based on stolen TechFlow data, and even signed their first consulting contract. Meanwhile, Agent Mitchell kept me informed of the investigation's progress. They'd obtained warrants for Julia's and Anya's email accounts, bank records, and phone communications. They'd also placed both women under surveillance. They're building a strong case against themselves, she told me during a brief phone call. We should be ready to make arrests within the next few days. Arrests? Yes, Mr. Patterson. This is a serious federal crime. They'll be arrested, charged, and held pending trial. The reality of what I'd set in motion was becoming clearer. Julia wouldn't just lose her job or her reputation. She'd lose her freedom. But then I thought about the $15,000 she'd stolen from our savings account. The months of lies, the affair, the complete disrespect for our marriage and my intelligence. She'd made her choices. Now she'd live with them. The end came on a Thursday morning. I was at work when Julia called, her voice shaking with panic. Dave, you need to come home right now. What's wrong? The FBI is here. They have a warrant. They're searching the house. I felt a chill run through me. What do they want? They won't tell me. They just keep asking about my computer and my business activities. Dave, I'm scared. I'll be right there. But I didn't go right there. Instead, I called Agent Mitchell. We're executing the search warrant now, she confirmed. We'll be making arrests this afternoon. Do you need me there? No, it's better if you stay away for now. We'll contact you later. I spent the afternoon at Murphy's, nursing a beer and waiting for my phone to ring. Eli could tell something was happening, but he didn't push for details. You look like a man watching his life change, he said. Something like that. At 4:30 p.m., Agent Mitchell called. Julia Patterson and Anya Volkov have been arrested on federal charges of economic espionage and conspiracy to commit theft of trade secrets. They're being held pending arraignment. What happens now? They'll appear before a federal magistrate tomorrow morning. Bail will be set, assuming they're not considered flight risks. After that, the case will proceed through the federal court system. I thanked her and hung up, then sat in my truck outside Murphy's, trying to process what had happened. My wife was in federal custody. My marriage was over. My life as I'd known it was finished. But I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was free. When I finally went home, the house felt different. Empty, but not in a bad way. Clean, like the air had been purified. I walked through the rooms Julia and I had shared for 8 years, and I felt nothing but relief. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Dave, this is Leah. Julia called me from jail. She wants me to represent her. Are you going to? That depends. She's claiming she had no idea what she was doing was illegal. She says someone must have set her up. What do you think? I think she's grasping at straws. The evidence against her is overwhelming. But Dave, she also says you've been acting strange lately, like you knew this was coming. I chose my words carefully. I knew she was lying to me. I knew she was stealing money from our account. I didn't know it was federal crime until the FBI explained it to me. The FBI contacted you? I contacted them. When I found out what Julia and Anya were planning, I felt obligated to report it. Silence. Then, you turned in your own wife. I reported criminal activity to the appropriate authorities. Dave, Leah, Julia made her choices. She chose to have an affair. She chose to steal from her employer. She chose to use our money to fund her scheme. She chose to lie to me about all of it. I just made sure she couldn't escape the consequences. This will destroy her life. She already destroyed her life, and she tried to destroy mine in the process. Another long pause. I can't represent her. Conflict of interest. I understand. Dave, are you okay? Really? I looked around my empty house, thought about my empty bank account, considered my uncertain future. I'm better than I've been in months, and I was. For the first time since Julia had casually announced her affair over Chinese takeout, I felt like myself again. Not the victim of someone else's betrayal, but the architect of my own justice. Julia would face trial for her crimes. She'd probably go to prison. Our marriage was over, and our shared life was finished. But I'd won something more valuable than revenge. I'd won back my self-respect. The next morning, I woke up alone in my house and made coffee for one person. I read the newspaper, which featured a front-page story about the corporate espionage arrests at TechFlow. Julia's and Anya's names were prominently mentioned. My phone was full of messages from neighbors, friends, and co-workers who'd seen the news. Everyone wanted to know if I was okay, if I needed anything, if there was something they could do to help. I answered a few of the calls, accepting condolences and support, playing the role of the shocked and betrayed husband. Which wasn't entirely false. I had been shocked and betrayed. I just hadn't been passive about it. Mrs. Donnelly knocked on my door around noon, carrying a casserole and wearing her most sympathetic expression. Dave, dear, I saw the news. I'm so sorry about Julia. Thank you, Mrs. Donnelly. It's been a difficult time. If there's anything you need, anything at all, you just let me know. I appreciate that. She hesitated at the door. You know, I always thought something seemed off about her lately. All those late nights, the new clothes, the secretive phone calls. You noticed that? Oh, honey, the whole neighborhood noticed. We just didn't want to say anything. I nodded gravely. I wish someone had. Would it have made a difference? I considered the question. Probably not, but it might have saved me some sleepless nights. After she left, I sat in my kitchen and allowed myself a moment of genuine satisfaction. Everything had worked out exactly as I'd planned. Julia was facing the consequences of her actions. Anya was collateral damage, but she'd been equally guilty. TechFlow's stolen data had been recovered. Justice had been served. My phone rang. It was Eli. Saw the news. You want company tonight? Actually, yeah, that sounds good. Murphy's at 7? I'll be there. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to going out. Not to spy on anyone or gather intelligence or plan my next move. Just to have a drink with a friend and celebrate the fact that I was still standing while my enemies had fallen. I'd learned something important over the past few weeks. I was much more dangerous than anyone had given me credit for. Julia had underestimated me. Anya had dismissed me. Brent had ignored me. They'd all assumed I was just another cuckolded husband who'd sulk and suffer in silence. They'd been wrong about that, and it had cost them everything. As I got ready to meet Eli, I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked different. Leaner, sharper, more focused. Like I'd shed some weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The weight of being someone else's victim. I was done being a victim. From now on, I was something much more dangerous. A man who'd learned exactly what he was capable of when pushed too far. And if anyone else wanted to test those capabilities, they were welcome to try. But they'd better be prepared for the consequences.